and welcome to another episode of the Ping Pong Show. Today we have some unbelievable guests and some of the biggest personalities in table tennis.
Jay, if you want to introduce yourself, those that don't know.
Hi everyone, Jason Subaru, former Irish international and British champion. Been coaching probably the best part of 20 years, mostly in London. I'm now the director of sport for Greenhouse Charity, which includes quite a few different sports, and I get to work with some pretty amazing coaches, really. So love talking sport, love talking coaching. So this is a great platform, and I'm really happy to be part of it today.
Garth, obviously you've done an interview, but it's going to be your first debate show. Do you want to remind people who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. So as I said, my name's Garth Kinlock. I'm sort of highest ranking in the men's is 16. I represented England at the English Open in 2009, and I'm the captain of the biggest table tennis team in the world.
When you win it 10 times, then you come back to us, yeah?
Yeah. Biggest team.
All right. Cool. Let's start off with 10 times British champion captain. Jay, your question. Let's get into it.
So I had a lot of thought about this, and with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, I was going to ask a question about whether or not table tennis has a problem with discrimination, stroke prejudice of any type. And I think I'll park that for another day, actually. I think that would be a really good one for another day. Let's talk a little bit more sport rather than a bit of politics, if you like. So my question is, England as a nation, or the UK as a group of nations, have done okay, reasonably well, I think, in collecting medals down the years in the men's side of table tennis. I want to ask the panel why they think the girls haven't managed to perform at the same level the men have over the last 3 or 4 decades. I know it's a fairly open question, but I think it's a really important point. And not only why we haven't, but what can we do to start winning medals, as the boys have managed to keep doing, whether that be Commonwealth medals, European medals, or world medals. And I'll start with Garth.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a really sort of political question, isn't it? Because you're looking into gender roles there, and yeah, I'm gonna say it how I think it is. So I actually think there is a cultural problem in the UK generally with females when it gets to around the age of 16, 17. The drop off in sport is so dramatic, and it's more dramatic than it is amongst the males. So I think we're pretty good at, getting females in at a young age, and then training and getting to a high level. But actually, like, sort of staying in the sport long term, I think is much more difficult. Don't know the reasons exactly why, but that's my view.
And what do you think we could do to improve it?
That's a very, very difficult one. I'll pass for now, and you maybe go on to someone else, and I'll see if I've got sort of an answer at the end of it.
All right, I'll pass it over to Danny, who played with probably our most successful girls of late, and trained with them quite a lot. Danny?
Yeah, it's weird you asked that question, because when I was thinking about my question today, one that popped into my mind is, why are the women so much weaker than the men? And the reason I wasn't going to ask that question is because I didn't actually have an answer and a reason why they are. When I was playing with Tintin and Maria, and I spent a lot of time with them, and they are now the 1 and 2 in the UK. But why is there? What can be done? Because I'm not a coach and I'm not involved at that level. I don't know what can be done. Garth said about the dropout, the amount of people that drop out of sport 16, 17. What can be done? I honestly don't know. The only thing I do feel is, obviously, players of Tintin's level, if she had been on the male side, would have moved into a professional team and started earning a good salary. She top 100 in the world. She would have started earning very good money. That's not reflected in the women's side. But apart from that, I don't actually have anything to say. I don't actually know how I feel about it and what can be done.
So how did the rest of Europe manage to continue? That's a very open question, but how come all the girls around the rest of Europe continue to improve? I mean, professionalism is one part, But that would be the same whether you're from England, Wales, Germany, Sweden, France. The league is the league. Why do other countries continue to churn out international, high class, top 50 players consistently?
The one thing I do, it comes down to, again, is that professional league setup that they have in Germany, France. The girls, they get to 16, 17 out of the junior national team, and then they go into a Pro B, Pro A team, and there's a sort of progression for them to improve within the sport. The women's British League, there'd be no point in Tintin or Maria or people around that level going to it. And from my
none of our men's team have played British League for 10 years.
Yeah. Again, I don't actually. It's a very good question because I don't have anything. I don't know what to say about it. There's a huge problem, and it's something that needs to be dealt with because there is such a big divide between the men's team and the women's team. But what that can be, I don't know.
Cool. Appreciate that. Nice one. V?
For me, I think it's quite simple, really. It kind of led into my question I was going to ask you later. It's more that sort of like the people that we did have, like the Lisa Lomanes's and stuff like that in the past, they didn't continue within the sport to be that sort of like role model, that target figure for everyone to push on. So then the standards just dropped off. So like the person at the top is always getting lower because there's no one to be able to strive towards. And I think that our standing in the girls has just got less and less compared to like what it was in the past. I think things that haven't helped with that is obviously sort of like team selection, taking sort of like kids to the adult tournaments when they've got their own ones to like play in. And so therefore like our good girls that could still then progress at sort of like 22, not even in their prime, but some of the best players in England not getting selected to play for their country because a 16-year-old's being selected. Those guys then drop off and then don't ever reach their full potential and could carry on playing, you know? And I think selection's been a big part of that. Can't be hidden from, really.
And just to back that up, Vidal, the only thing I would say as well, watching the national championships this year, in the women's single top 32, there was probably 3 or 4 people over the age of 20.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down. Yeah, there was 6 out of 32. But then equally in the men's, there was 15 of them that are still out of the 32 that were under 21s.
Yeah, that goes back to that junior senior retention thing because just to comment, when I played the national qualifier, I'm 24 years old and I was the second oldest at that national qualifier tournament. So
that is a joke.
So that's it. But I think definitely like if we had sort of like the better players stay in the sport longer at the top end and be selected on their merit, then the juniors would be. That's also why the juniors you might perceive as not being as good now as the rest because their target is minimal. You know, you could be like #1 junior in the country and you're top 15 in England. You know, that shouldn't be possible because our retention at the top wasn't as good. I mean, you can say, yeah, we've got Paul and Liam now, 2 very good players. Yes, Sam, Tom on the cuffs there as well. But then if you look at sort of like Des's era, there's Cook, Saeed, Bradley Billerton, you know, there's a whole list, Skylar Andrew, there's a whole list that were all at the top, all sort of like top 60 in the world at one point, being able to push all the next juniors on for them to sort of like strive to want to be like them and become them, you know?
So what do we do?
Make right selections for teams, you know? I think it has to come to a new stage now where the people that are 22, 23, they have to be respected, given the same opportunities as everybody else that they deserve. Let them carry on playing, give them sort of like a professional outlet, maybe help fund them a little and help them find teams abroad as well, because as you said, the teams here aren't strong enough. Not everyone's playing in like the best divisions that they could possibly play abroad as well, you know, and help them with the support network behind them, be able to push them to reach their full potential. Not let them just drop out. Don't give them that option to drop out.
And what do the players at Grantham that you work with, the girls that you've got there, where do they go and how do they progress?
So sort of like, for instance, the highest ranked player we've got now is Molly. I think she's like 6 or 7 in England in the senior women's. She's still only, 17? You know, so last year I got her into a team in Sweden. She played second highest division last year. This year, she'll be playing in the highest division in Sweden. You know, so it's finding a coach that recognises that and then puts them in the right situations or contacts the right people, then put them in the right situation to then progress. And I've got no doubt that she and some of the other girls that we're trying to find teams for abroad as well will be successful, because I think they realise that the top level isn't that high in England, and to actually be recognised, you've got to be the best in Europe, not just in England. You know, so they're striving towards that now.
I think Vidal's hit the nail on the head there for me. And actually, what can we do to enable the women to go further? And it is what, as you said, finding them teams abroad, encouraging them more to go pro. If I imagine if a junior was sort of men's junior was 10 in England, as a women was 10 in England, I imagine that the male will be pushed a lot more to go abroad and to take that chance, take that risk. Then the female probably go to uni, play the safe option, because there's not quite a professional scene there. But I think finding them teams abroad from earlier would be a good option.
Just to add something, we did obviously have two very good women, Kelly Sibley and Jo Parker, now Jo Drinkle, but they were obviously training at the national centre alongside the men's team and stuff like that. So I think that's going to help a lot. But I just wanted to add a little bit before I pass it back to Jason, because obviously his question, he's definitely got something to say on it.
Remember though, like those two that you just mentioned, they're still good enough to play in the team now. And exactly what I said, they've now dropped out. And now the juniors are going to have to try and fill those spots instead of staying in the sport until someone pushes them out. You know, that's what it should be.
Just sorry, before we go back to Jason, just have like a little sort of opinion on it. So to answer the question, why is the standard of the women so much worse than the men, or why is it worse?
I never said that.
Oh, sorry. What was the question? So what was it? What was the question?
Win as many medals as the men.
Okay. Okay. Why didn't they win as many medals as the men? So firstly, there's if you put it on a relative scale, even though we have had some very top ranked women in the world, top 100, I think in a relative speaking, you're talking about this idea of how easy is it to go full time. So a lot of men and the depth in the UK of our like standard and winning medals, and the men being fairly strong, is because you can actually make a living out of playing table tennis abroad. And I think for the women that's very, very difficult, even at the highest. I think you have to play in some of the top leagues in Europe to actually make a living out of the sport. So it goes back to that question. I think if the women's game had more money in it, I think more women would aspire to become full-time table tennis players, and therefore, and so to some extent in the men, because of that illusion that there is money there at the top of the sport, it motivates people to improve and therefore raises the level of the men. So it's that question about choice. In the UK, you get more women choosing to do other sports because you can make money and therefore you can do it for a living. And that's the level we're talking about, winning medals and making it, make a living.
And Jason, just one thing where you said, what would you do about it? Just a quick thought. A couple of years ago, Kelly and Joanna started playing men's British League Premier because it gave them access to much better matches, obviously, at home. Is that something they could implement in the junior level, that if a girl, I'm thinking of someone like Tintin and Maria, who are good enough to play junior British League Premier on the boys' side, is that something you try and implement and get them to be playing against stronger opposition on a more regular basis?
Tintin's going to be playing for Peterborough this year.
Oh, what, in the men's British League?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking when Tintin was 14, 15, would it have been good, instead of her playing junior British League women's, which she probably won every match, that she was definitely strong enough to play men's, the boys' side, and that would have definitely developed a game instead of beating people 11-0 that she probably was.
Yeah. Over to you, Jay.
Yeah, go on, put us out of our misery.
Well, I can't turn around and pretend I've got all the answers, actually. It's just something that I was thinking about a little bit. And a lot of you have hit a lot of the more, probably I would say, difficulties around why they haven't done what they've done. I mean, Vidal mentioned Lisa Lomas. I think she was the last medalist, I think in something like 1992, from the home nations to win a medal at the European Championships. I don't think we won a gold medal at women's level since '85. all that while those players were still playing. So it's obviously, I'm not saying it's easy to win medals, but we've picked up medals in the Commonwealth for men's. The numbers game, Liam, I like, but then I always feel a little bit done by that because I look at Charlotte Carey and I wouldn't say she's a million miles behind our girls, and she's from a nation and done it on her own and goes and lives in Sweden. So that kind of knocks it on the head about whether or not you can make it professional.
Thanks, guys. Hope I can come on again soon. Bye.
Is it the money side? I can't answer that question. The one thing I can say is I think in order to build a team, you have to build a culture. I played for England as a junior, didn't particularly enjoy it, didn't feel like a family environment, didn't feel like somewhere I was going to prosper and grow, wasn't much place to have a lot of fun. I coached Maria for a number of years. I coached Tintin for a number of years along with Danny. I know none of them particularly, I'm probably speaking out of turn, didn't really enjoy their junior table tennis because of the way it was set up. So there's a few things you have to do. For me, the first thing is you have to find people that are willing. So we were talking there about people who play abroad. I mean, I can think of Hannah Hicks, who played in Sweden for a number of years. Karina, who's played in France for a number of years. Like I said, Charlotte, who's obviously from Wales, but she's traveled. I think she changes clubs quite often. She's done a few different countries already. So it kind of makes sense that you could say the money side's not so good, difficulty's not so good. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. The money's not so good for the boys either. So it don't really matter unless you're at the top level. So if it's something you want to do and something you want to get to the very best of, I think it's about building a culture. Vidal made great points earlier about not, if the tree is very low in terms of picking the fruit at the top of the tree and it's not very high fruit, then it's difficult to keep pushing up. But I suppose if I was in charge, I would really still invest in the likes of Maria and Tintin. I would probably still have people like Hannah Hicks and Karina around about, and I would try and build a squad of probably somewhere between 12, 20 girls, get them training really hard. Whether they play abroad or not doesn't really make a difference, but I'll try and get them together, at least bi-monthly, get them working as a team, practicing together, building a culture, so that then when the next girls come through, whether that be a Molly, Molly's ranked 913 in the world at the moment. Tintin's our highest ranked girl at 93. Denise Pyatt is another good example. She's 355. I think she's been playing abroad for a number of years. So the potential is there, but I'm not 100% sure we're looking after the culture in terms of the women's team. The boys are okay. I mean, you look at, so I've got a list of the boys here, everyone who's current on the latest ranking list. So you've got Liam, who hasn't played in England ever in terms of British League. Paul played a couple of years when he was out. Sam, I don't think ever played. Tom Jarvis has never played. Matthew Daish is ranked 523. He's only just out of juniors and has been living in Germany for a couple of years. Sam maybe was injured for the last few years of his junior. He's lived in Sweden ever since, I think. David Macbeth has played abroad all the time. Bagley, who probably, by the way, is probably at least fourth on that list in terms of playing ability. So for me, it's about building a culture. Girls are more social than boys. They like to have a bit of fun. They like to have a nice environment. Boys don't really care. Like, we're mates, but when we're on the table, we just want to kill each other. But I think girls have a slightly different take on the way sport is played. So for me, if it was me in charge, I would get lots of the girls together, training bi-monthly, bring through one squad. And that squad, by the way, they might never medal. But the point is they're laying the foundations for the next. And then you just have to keep investing, you keep after building and keep growing. And that would be the way I would deal with it. And I hope something does happen, because I think it's incredibly sad. I played the European Championships in Paris when I was a junior. Sally Marling, I think now she's married now, Sally Clark, won a medal. I can't remember if it was bronze or silver. Unbelievable atmosphere in Paris, at INSEP, where the national team still trained there in France. It was brilliant. She'd given up the sport within a year. I mean, it's crazy. And she medaled at the European Championships. I can't work that out.
So the idea would be to get most of the women together, like Tintin, Maria, or whatever. So Tintin's probably going to be a doctor in a couple of years, and you probably have to be within the top 30 in the world in the women to earn what a doctor's earning. So the thing is, it does go back to this: if you get and put loads of investment into the women's game, is it better than the alternative, getting a job and earning the same as if you were 30, 40 in the world, and that's the choice that life is there. And in the men's game, you can be top 100 and earn a very good living.
I would not falter in the slightest for taking up becoming a doctor and doing that. That's exactly what she should be doing. But there's no way in the world the investment that England have put into her means that she is allowed to drop out of the sport. Like it or lump it. If she drops out of the sport, we have failed. We know she's been studying to be a doctor for the last 3, 4, 5 years. So how can we let her get to the end of her studies and then just leave us without no plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E, whatever you want? This is my point, the culture. So
it is a cultural thing.
It sounds a bit horrible, really. It sounds a bit horrible. Maybe you have to use, and use is the wrong word, but maybe you have to take advantage of the better players now to build your players for the future. I mean, poor Liam wouldn't be as good as he would be without Darius, without Paul, because he competed at a level that he wasn't allowed to compete at the time. If I'm perfectly honest, he might argue differently, and a lot of people might tell me I'm wrong. But because those two were so high as juniors and cadets, he was on their coattails. He got to play the middle matches. He got to be exposed to pressure like no one else could. And now that same advantage is happening to Sam. And I think that's always happened in the men's game. So after Des, after Skylar Andrews, Nicky Mason, the next generation then was Matthew Side coming through. Alex Perry won a few medals, different things. Then after them, it was Gareth, Terry. Then after them, it's Paul, Darius, Liam. Now we've got Sam Walker. Who's going to be after that? Is it Tom Jarvis? So the men have always managed to just keep a new player coming through because the fruit has always been quite high. So it's bringing up the level. So we're not going to get one peach come out of the tree and go straight to number 4 or 5 in the world. I could be wrong. So in the women's game, so we have to raise the overall standard and make it enjoyable to play, and then raise it again for the next level, and just keep raising until you start to get some. I mean, 93 is an incredible achievement, by the way. I'm not turning around and saying those girls have failed, but by no stretch of the imagination, it's a great achievement. But to not medal since 1992 in the European Championships, 1985 for a gold in the Commonwealth, which I think we should be medaling in the Commonwealth. I think I'm right in those statistics, but I could be wrong. But yeah, that's my answer. So I suppose it's over to you guys to ask the next question.
My question is, how can we as a sort of table tennis community, how can we attract first-rate athletes at a young age to get into the sport? The reason I ask that is because, if I think about my school, all the best athletes, best ones went to football, couple went to rugby, then, sort of second, third tier cricket, hockey, and then, it just sort of tails, and it's sort of at the bottom, you get the table tennis players, people who are not getting picked for anything in general. And it's no surprise that, our best table tennis players are also great all-round and probably top-tier athletes like Paul Jinkles and Liam Pitchford as well. So what can we do to, or can we even do it to get more of those that caliber of athlete into the sport at a young age? And I'll start off with Danny Lawrence.
I think table tennis is always going to struggle in schools. Oh, not always, but at the moment it struggles because it's not got the cooler factor of playing rugby, football, cricket, or something like that. But it goes back to what we said on another episode. I think it's because the profile of our top players at the moment, no one knows. Everyone thinks it's ping pong. Everyone thinks you're just knocking the ball back and forth. They don't understand that you need the physicality and to be an athlete to really progress in the sport. And I think that all starts from raising the profile of the sport from the top down. There's no point trying to do it from the bottom up. So yeah, I think that's something that the great Greenhouse do better than anyone else, because they do get so many people, so many good athletes playing at a young age and bring them through the sport.
So how are Greenhouse able to do it then? Because it's still the same profile of top players.
It's a good question again. It's I think obviously Jason's the best one to ask on this one, but I think it's definitely a number, like it's a numbers game with how many people you're throwing at the sport, and it's one of those sports where people try it and see it at the right level, they fall in love with it. The problem is people don't see it at the right level. They think they see it at the holiday camp kind of level, and I don't know what Greenhouse do to keep the flow of kids coming through the whole time. But as I said, that's definitely not a question I should answer. But I do feel that's what that's what they're the best at doing what they do.
Vidal, obviously, because of his sporting excellence. Is it QPR or no? Great basketball player, athletics, everything. Yeah. So how come you got? Why did you get into table tennis first and not, still in other sports? And why don't you think other people that you played football with, etc., get into table tennis?
Well, I'll start with why I got into table tennis, and it's a simple fact. I just hate losing. My friend beat me at some summer camp, and I asked him how come he was so good, and he told me there's a club round the corner. So literally the same afternoon, I went down to that club and got invited in, got playing straight away, and just fell in love, really. It's just simple as that. I think why Greenhouse do it so well is simply because we have a full-time coach inside the school, Like football has full-time football coaches inside schools, so you're going to get the people. It's not rocket science. If you invest in the sport in that way, putting coaches inside schools, people will always come. Yes, it might not be the cool factor when it first goes on, but I know plenty of the Greenhouse schools where as soon as kids are going to the school just to play table tennis, it is then sometimes can become the number one sport in the school. I think you have to invest coaches into schools, and you can get the players. It's just the right coach, right school. You will get them definitely. It's just a matter of making it fun. Showing them what it will look like at the top end. And I think kids get excited. I think table tennis for me is probably the only sport. I mean, I've coached all sports, but it's the only sport where you could literally within 15 minutes with a kid see an absolute difference from nothing, and they can feel it. From not being able to hit the ball over the net 3 times to then suddenly 15 minutes later getting 100 backhands on in a row. And you supporting that and making them feel good. Oh, you're one of the best players I've ever seen, at this level. It's just making it fun and engaging for them, and they can progress and then stay within the sport. And people that have clubs, I don't know why there isn't so many clubs say, oh, we don't have a lot of members and that lot. All those club coaches should be investing their time in going into the local primary schools and coaching the local primary schools, and then getting those kids to then come along to their clubs. If every club in England, don't know how many clubs there are, but just imagine, let's just say off the top of your head, you've got 200 clubs in England. If every club sent 2 coaches into 2 schools, 2 primary schools, once a week, you're going to instantly quadruple the amount of kids playing table tennis, and you'll get more benefit out of it. Plus, they would attract players into their clubs,
I don't think the clubs are good enough in England. So I think the club that I went to, and obviously I'm biased, but it was, and you said cool, right? And obviously cool, it depends, it's subjective, it's a subjective word, but the club I went to was the coolest club ever. It doesn't matter what you was playing, they could have been playing tiddlywinks, I would have been part of it, and that's what it's about. It's like Jason mentioned culture a lot in the last answer. I think a lot of the clubs they don't have that cool factor. Maybe they're run by people that haven't maybe moved on with the times, or they haven't tried to engage more of the local community. And I know you mentioned something about, you said all the better athletes drift towards the other sports, but I actually found that's not the case. I found a lot of the better athletes in other sports, they actually wanted to play table tennis. It's just maybe they were actually taken by another coach to play another sport and given a better opportunity, or the clubs wasn't as cool enough, there wasn't that setup around them. But yeah, I'll pass that back maybe to someone else if they want to comment on that, but that's how I felt anyway.
It's a good question, Garth. I think when you started off, you talked about how do we attract better athletes to the sport, and the conversation sort of travelled a little bit. Going back to it, in terms of introducing better athletes to this sport, table tennis is an early development sport. So actually, if you start table tennis earlier, your skill base at sport is actually much broader. That's a proven fact. They've done some testing around that. So a lot of athletes that have gone on to compete in different sports played table tennis as youngsters. Many, 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 many sports people. So why we lose those athletes could be for a number of reasons. One of the biggest ones for me, and I actually touched on it, again, is to do with your environment, your culture. Vidal spoke about it in terms of building the right atmosphere within a coaching session. Then there has to be the right environment for you to compete and learn. And schools are very good, and that's where you started the conversation, they're very good at classical sports, at your rugby, at your football, at your cricket, your netball, because they're historically been played at that level for years and years and years and years and years, and all the kids play it. So all the schools play those sports, and they already have their league set up. I mean, they still haven't set up a proper table tennis league for schools in anywhere I know. And I've been involved in school coaching for something like 20 years. So that's a factor, because competition is incredibly important to engage and keep people within the sport. Another thing that makes it probably slightly more challenging in terms of retention is that although you can get real quick success in terms of number of balls on the table, it requires a special athlete to play a sport like table tennis. It's the most difficult game in the world. Spin, speed, environment, conditions, equipment, timing, whether you've had a good day or bad day, anything can hamper the way you're playing and your enjoyment level, which then touch on to the fact is, if you don't enjoy your practice partner so much, you tend not to want to practice as much. If you get a practice partner, a sparring buddy that you love practicing with, and an environment, you'll practice 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day. So there's more than one factor. Whereas football, you know, you just go and you kick a football about, and you play a bit of one touch, one bounce, or you play, I can't remember the game now, was it goal or shoot or whatever it is, where you're all trying to score or do whatever. I'm showing my age here. So for me, is a number of things. Greenhouse, are they successful at getting more kids into schools? Vidal touched on that. It's all about having a coach in there in the right environment. It's not about building champions. It's about upskilling them. It's about teaching them that through training, competition, that it can translate across their life. So that's all we're trying to do. And if we find an athlete or a young person that gets particularly good, then we try to support them as much as possible, but not at the detriment of their schoolwork or life work. So I mean, yeah, there's no simple answer, but for me, athletes, to stay in the sport of table tennis, you really need a good environment. And that is why so many clubs just keep going. You know, they get their home venue and they keep going. The Barnets of this world, the Ellenboroughs, these clubs don't disappear. They're not as good as the Ormsbys in terms of performance level. We've got Bishop Auckland now. All these clubs are creating the right environment that will get kids coming, get kids playing. So there's no simple answer, but there's so many factors to what keeps a table tennis player playing. And family influence is incredibly important. You know, if you don't have the right support network, table tennis is a nightmare of a sport. You're traveling up and down the country 3 weekends a month minimum, and spending £300-400. We spoke about that last week on the episode. So it's just, there's a number of factors. Greenhouse make it a little bit easier for kids to play longer, because we're a charity, we can finance them a little bit longer. We have to try and make sure it's pound for pound good value for everybody. Otherwise, we're wasting our donors' money. But hopefully, it clears up. If it was me in charge, what would I do? I mean, you just got to get good people working with players. And if you do that, you'll always create a good environment. It's as simple as that. And people will play for longer. Derek Marples is the king of that. And the amount of table tennis players he's worked through up in that part of the woods. But that's my answer. Thank you, Garth.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, all really good points. Culture, starting early, having a coach there. I wonder as well if there's something to add. Jason, you say table tennis is the hardest sport, but it's less competitive in terms of the numbers of people who play. And I remember I was playing table tennis for about 2 or 3 years, and I was top 20 in England. So there is an opportunity there. Players who are talented. I know Liam won't like that word, but players who are better athletes and they have more ability. They're able to get to a higher national standard and international standard a lot earlier than they can in other sports, which could be sort of encourage them to stay in the game.
Yeah, but that doesn't always translate into staying in the game. I mean, a perfect example is you could be ranked 5 in the juniors in Europe or whatever measurement in the world, but as soon as you get 18, you're now competing against 10,000 18 to 35-year-olds. So there's nothing to say that you can go from 5 as a junior to get anywhere near 5 as a senior. You might end up just making 500, because you might have learned. It's the same in anything. Same in studying. Same in school life. some kids learn at different rates and different paces. Your physicality, your environment. So, I mean, it's a really good point. But the transition, the most important years in table tennis is 18 to 23. If you're still really keen at 18, you'll probably keep playing till around about 23. If you've got a good environment, nice practice conditions, you play for a nice club, you'll probably continue playing post 23. But if you haven't got that between 18 and 23, then that's why you're sitting on here talking about table tennis instead of playing, boys.
Also, Garth, I just thought I'd make a point. Let's not fool ourselves that our sport is only not fortunate enough to pick and choose like the best athletes. I mean, I think there could be better things done to just attract more kids to the game, full stop. And I think the biggest factor for me is television, getting the sport on TV, and also maybe getting the top table tennis athletes agents so that they can do TV appearances and just build the profile of the sport. Because most sports that have the highest participation of young people are coincidentally also the sports that get the most TV time or have the most hype.
Funny, like athletics wasn't even a professional sport like 10, 15 years ago. You know, it weren't even classed as a professional sport. It was on TV all the time. You know? We don't have that. Terrible.
Yeah,
But we don't even have that at all. I mean, Wimbledon's only on once a year, and tennis is massive. We don't even have one thing on TV, or the ping pong.
I would argue that table tennis isn't a spectator sport, though, and you know, I don't think it really deserves to be on TV when you got. I know sort of Dan Ives did a university paper where he studied the average rally length of the 2008 Beijing Olympics. It was something like 1.4 shots. That's so low and so bad for a viewer.
But yeah, I mean, that's where table tennis needs to learn from the ping pong.
On the head. That's the whole problem. Is the whole that's such a good stat because something needs to be done.
It's up to 2.6 now, boys. We're improving.
That's such a good point. That's why people don't. That's also not appealing to people when they're first shown the sport.
Yeah, but then don't put the whole match on TV. Do a highlights reel. Like, you just got to have good people with good new inventive ideas, like Dan from Table Tennis Daily, to be able to, like, he's putting Junior British League on, and everyone's watching that. It's the way you film it, and you just got to get the right guys to put it on. You're right, though. You just don't show the whole match. If that's how it is, that's how it is. You know, I mean, and a darts match. I think if you actually watch the camera changes a lot. You're not just fixated on the board and watching this dart go on the board. It's moving around. It's got the crowd. So there's ways of doing it, but yeah, hopefully we'll get there. Let's move on anyway. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to edit forever. Danny, your question, mate.
My question, right? I put it out there on Facebook and Twitter just before we come on, and a guy called Mark Tanner, who's been replying to all of our videos, has come back with a question. But it's actually rang a bell with me from when I was watching Pitch and Paul's Talk Balls on Sunday, and they were saying that no matter what tournament they're at and however they perform, they know they will get picked for England in the next tournament. And all four of them, Pitch, Drinks, Walker, and Jarvis, they're in that position where they should be. They know that they're going to get picked and they deserve to be there. However, Mark asked me, who in your opinion would you realistically pick if one of those were to get injured or not be able to play a tournament? Because I was looking at the ranking list and. Excluding Bagley, who obviously doesn't get selected for whatever other reasons, there's that whole drop off that we were talking about last week. Where would you go if one of those was to get injured and you need four in a team? You're in a bit of shit street, really. Where'd you go? I will go to. What I was just going to say. I was going to read just quickly from 5. You've got David Macbeth at 5, who is very fringe, and then you've got Chris Duran, Helshan, who's a full-time student. Darius, who's working more so than playing table tennis. Sam Maybe at number 9. Mike O'Driscoll, who's a veteran. Luke Saville, which I've got to admit, I don't know what he does. Josh Bennett, who's at university. Then you're down to like Ross Wilson, who's obviously a power player. Matt Ware, who's a full-time coach. And then you're down to like Larestos, and then you're at Ethan Walsh at number 19. So yeah, it might be a bit controversial. I don't know. I just thought, what would you do? Who would you go for?
I would like to say Chris Duran, because I would just love to see Chris Durant play for England as a senior again. But you know, that is a serious thing. As in, like, I was having this conversation with Chris the other day, and I said, if you just give it a few years, you know, wait until Paul quits, you're in that team. And I think it is a good question. I think, look, to answer the question straight, I think it has to be so it'd be Tom Jarvis, Sam Walker, Macbeth.
I'll admit
and
Macbeth
then,
and Bagley are kind of their fringe, and I get.
Yeah, no, Macbeth would have to, because he's got the experience, and then yeah, I guess maybe. I mean, look, for me, it would be a Durant, because I think it would just be good. But you're right; it's a big problem. The fact that it's not too far away now, I don't think, until these types of questions become a reality, and the sport at that level is in the position to make decisions. Okay, so to answer the question briefly, I would put Macbeth, and then, to be honest with you, I would maybe start poaching Chinese players that didn't get into the national team, because I know that they always that a lot of them reside in other countries and represent those countries, and it keeps the sport alive at a high level.
Yeah, another Chensin Warren, yeah?
Yeah, no, precisely. So that would be my strategy.
Yeah, so I think it's important for the coaches to have a conversation with those players to see what their ambitions are, because, like you said, if they're just students and they're like, you know what, yeah, I'm just sort of playing twice a week and I'm not that bothered, then you can't pick them, even if they are a stronger player overall. Yeah, Bagley and Macbeth, I think, guaranteed. You know, obviously a bit biased towards David because he's a friend of mine, but you know, he beat a top 30 in the world player 2 years ago. He got a Commonwealth medal with drink on the double, so the standard is there, and he can do a job if need be. Bagley's obviously been doing it for years, but then after those two, yeah, you have to have a conversation with the players. And if people aren't serious and you go towards the juniors who are, I think, you know, I wouldn't have a problem with, you know, if no one had aspirations to play professionally up until Ethan Walsh, I'd have no problem you know, picking him and some of the other juniors.
For me, you have to go Bagley, put everything aside. He's still the best player. And if you're talking then looking at the GB team for sort of like Olympics and that lot, you got to be looking at Rumgay as well. You know, he's been left out quite a bit.
Yeah.
Overshadowed.
That's true.
Yeah, and then I'd go down to sort of like Durant and that. I don't think that for me personally, drafting in juniors into the senior team is advisable. Sets a bad sort of like standard. We've done it with the girls, and now look, we're complaining about it. So, you know, it kind of puts the rest of the people off. Sort of like, but yeah, you have to have that aspiration. But again, I don't think until someone's good enough to push you out the team, you should be selected on merit. Yeah, so for me, it has to go Bagley, Rumgay, Durant, sort of thing.
Perfect. Jason?
Nice one. Thanks, Dan. Firstly, obviously, Bagley is quite, like I said earlier in my bit, is quite clearly number 4. After that, if you're talking about Team GB, then Gavin would be in there. But I would ignore everyone else unless they're playing full time. So simple as that. Unless you're dedicating your life to the sport, I'm not really interested, because we're talking about international sport at the highest level. So if Chris was willing to give up everything he does, train like a professional, live like a professional, he would be definitely at the top of that list. But on the current ranking list, ITTF ranking list, after Tom is Matthew Daish. Whether people like it or not, the guy's ranked 523 in England, and I don't think he's ever played for England, in my opinion. Sorry, in the world.
Yeah, but to be honest, Jay, like, he's not good enough. And remember, like, the new ranking list is done on like international tournaments that you can play in. So, like, on that list,
whether he's good enough or not, yeah. I'm not interested. He's living in Germany. He's training in Germany. He's 523 in the world on the current ranking list. How can he not be more of a selection than someone who's living and playing part-time in England?
But okay, so Sam Maybe, what about Sam Maybe? He's playing. Sam Maybe plays full time.
My list. It's exactly next on my list. He's 500. He's 559.
So you would be
559. He would 100% be there. 100% be there.
So would you select someone that? Would you select someone, say Matthew Daish over Sam Maybe, as in somebody that is full time and playing a lot, but is probably of a lower standard than somebody?
If I am Gavin Evans, these guys that are playing full time, I want to see them. I want to work with them. I want to see what they are capable of.
Yeah.
Because when you start playing full time in a foreign environment, it's a different kettle of fish. You have to have a mentality so strong. You have to be so willing to give up your life in your home country to travel somewhere to follow your dream. You are already halfway there. The table tennis part is being in the right environment. I spoke about it earlier. You're in the right environment, you're training with the right people, you've got good practice partners, you're getting good exposure to matches. I'm not saying they're going to go on and be the best in the world, but, and equally, the question is, it's a double-edged sword. If Danny's talking about a one-off event, I mean, you pick Bagley, simple as that. If we're talking about where is the next guys on the list coming from, it's got to be those guys that are dedicating their life to it. There's no point picking someone who's finished. No point picking someone who used to play but now sits as a beer 2 times a week and plays table tennis as a hobby. Forget those guys.
Some of those players,
their lives.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I agree with certain aspects of it, but you've also got to realise as well that if some of those players like Duran got the opportunity, don't you think then he would actually make the strive to then play like a professional again and be like full-time playing in that lot and not actually work? Because he doesn't really have like a so-called full-time job now. And if he was going to be picked week in, week out, he would make that decision, wouldn't it? Make life a lot easier for a lot of players.
Week in, week out. He's not. That's what I'm saying to you. These boys are doing it when they're not being picked week in, week out. That's the point, Vidal. Yeah. If Duran wants it, and I hope he does, go and start training, and then make people pick you. These boys are already doing it without a chance of playing for England.
Just a quick one on that. In the women's game, obviously a lot of the women that represent England are fairly young, and some of them are like 17, 18, and they're choosing to do A-levels or playing full-time. And in many cases, some of the girls that have chosen not to do further education and gone full-time to play have been selected over players that potentially are slightly of a higher standard, but those players of a higher standard haven't been selected because they've chosen to do education rather than the person that's gone to play full-time. At that level and at that age, do you think that's a fair decision?
1,000,000%. How could it not be? I mean, we live in a generation of professional athletes, professional sport. It's much more than just training. I'm a massive sports fan. I happen to be a very lucky fan at the moment of a football club, Liverpool Football Club. You listen to Klopp talking about what's important. He's only interested in mentality, work rate, all the things that we always talk about, we value. He talks about those same things. If you live the life, you deserve the life. If you're not living the life, you don't deserve the life. You know, it's a privilege to but if someone is going to sacrifice their life and go and live abroad, dedicate their life to a sport, it would be suicide to think that Sam maybe would never get another training camp with England. I mean, there's no training camps anymore. If you said to me, what would you do, Jason? I'd say everyone who plays professional, we're going to have a tournament. And whoever wins that tournament, you're going to go and play for England. If you don't play professional, you don't play. This is a high-level sport. Why are we worried about people who play part-time table tennis? They're not going to be playing part-time table tennis if they're going to get selected every week. So why don't we just pick the guys who are already dedicating their lives to it? Again, that's my opinion. I mean, I'm not saying it's the answer for all answers, but that's where I'd be looking.
No, perfect. Cheers, Jason. I'll see. It was my question. The one thing I put in bold is obviously prior to Jason saying this is full time. We're talking like the men's national team for our country. If you go below the Bagley situation, that's far too controversial for me to bring up. So I won't. That's a whole other topic. And then Duran, you're then down to players like Sam maybe, but in the middle of there is Michael Driscoll. Like there's no chance that he's ever going to want to play for England again. But it comes down to, I think, the strength and depth that we're going from our national team at 4 and 5, and the next full-time player that is, I feel, ready to be selected is, we're talking like number 10 in England. That's got to be a problem. Duran, I know I like Duran. I think he talks a good game, but if he really believes he's good enough to be in the team, then why is he not living abroad, training and doing it? And it's as much, I think, England, everyone's talking about it, then just go and do it. Do you know what I mean? And my opinion was, I'd probably go down to, my opinion is, on the ranking list, I had to sub out Luke Saville because I don't know what his situation is, and I didn't want to say, and then back myself up saying he's full-time, he's not. I went down to Ethan Walsh at number 19. But then, listening to Vidal, is it detrimental? I remember Alex Ramsden was number 1 in junior, played for the men's senior team, got demolished in the Commonwealth Games, and then as far as I'm aware, he never picked up a bat after that.
Well, that's a great question. Shout out to Mark. Danny, you're not getting the the reward for that question. That's a
Shit,
good
why
question.
did I even mention his name?
Good question. All right, who's next? It is Vidal, isn't it?
Yeah, last but least, I'm running out of beers. Come on, Vidal.
I had something planned before, which I changed, and then like mine was quite close to Jason's as well, and it kind of touched on it on one of the previous shows about like why do you think the juniors are so bad now compared to previous ones? But I want to flip that on its head and, well, why are the seniors actually so bad now compared to like previous generations? In terms of like when you go to Grand Prix and events like that, it's just filled with juniors, you know? But why is it that no seniors seem to be playing table tennis?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it goes back to that retention issue. So I think a lot of seniors that once they start the game, they don't continue and they do drop out. A lot of really good players, like Danny being an example. So I think it is cultural. A lot of people play to a certain level of junior, and then when they start to lose or they have other commitments in life and they can't keep up the same level, maybe they drop slightly, they do just associate enjoyment with results. And because they're not getting the results anymore, they don't enjoy it and they drop off. And therefore, juniors are the only ones playing. I think that is the biggest problem. So you have to make it more enjoyable, and you have to incentivize young seniors to want to go and spend money and hotels and their weekend playing these tournaments.
It's kind of my theme for today. I think it's a little bit about the environment. Those tournaments were good fun when we first started playing them. They were really good fun. I mean, I probably shouldn't admit it now, but it don't matter anymore, does it? I mean, we used to go out and party in the evenings. Nightlife was good. There was, you know, I was a young man, and there was more female table tennis players. The environment was better. It was more fun. It was more social. I spoke about that last week. Table tennis as a social is terrible, the tournaments. We need to do something about it. I don't know what to do, but that, and by the way, the proof is in the pudding. It's not a cultural thing, because the veterans are doing better than we've ever done, and they make it a social.
Yeah.
You know, you talk to all the vets, they love their tournaments. They have a proper social. Friday night, Saturday night, some of them stay over there Sunday night, and they go home to work on Monday or whatever. They love the social side of it.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that, Vidal. When I remember going out, like, you know, we'd finish a Saturday, hopefully you won a band one or whatever was on that Saturday. You might have got a couple of quid in your skyrocket, and then you'd be out and about on the town. It'd be a good laugh. And that was just it. It was just a good environment. And I was with my brothers. I was with my teammates. I was, you know, you had guys from Progress, guys from Jags, that's now Fusion. London was a big part of that scene. London was a big part of the Grand Prix scene when it first started. And I don't think London is anymore. I don't think people, you know, the tournaments aren't good value for money, and they're not as much fun. And maybe we've all just got older.
Let's go, Garth.
You know what? Jason took the words right out of my mouth. I remember watching the great Jason Sugru versus Lorestas Trumpauskas at like Bathroom and Prix in about 2005. But
I thought he was going to say you saw him on a dance floor.
Not in later years, maybe. But, yeah, the culture was better. I remember seeing people like Chris Beckley and stuff, like Vidal and Jason will know this guy, but he's like every single tournament giving it absolutely everything, so much passion. And you know, they weren't doing it for money, because there's no money in the band 2, 3, and 4, but they were doing it for the pride, and there was more of a social scene. I remember when I was like 20 as well, a lot of my peers were playing Grand Prix, like Tom Maynard, Chris, Matt, David, and it was because everyone was there, it seemed to get, it was more popular. So yeah, the culture and the friendship, the social side of things, but also the cost as well. For me, paying, you know, going up to Preston, you know, all in, come back £400 down, probably haven't won anything. Might, you know, one tournament out of 4 might win the band one or something. It's just not really worth it from financial side.
You're backing yourself there, aren't you, Garth? Winning band one.
When I think back to Grand Prix, when I was up and coming in the juniors, I remember players like Garth, Tom Maynard, Chris Ram, Matt Ware playing the Grand Prix. And then I look at Grand Prix now from afar, not being there. And I then think that the generation, my generation as juniors, I'm talking like Sean Cullen, Igor, Lewis Gray, Zach Lizzett. None of us are playing anymore. And that's that middle part. That is what Jason was saying, that 23-year-old part. None of us are playing. So that's why you either have juniors or you go up to like the O'Driscolls at 40 years old that are doing really well. But that generation, the whole arse of it has fallen out. And it's left such a big gap in the age ranges. And you've got the 18-year-olds, Ethan Walsh's, and then there's nothing till Rory Scott at 40.
That's not necessarily right. Me, Jack Bennett, and Gabriel are still on the scene.
All right, so I apologise, but I mean, unless you've got like the Rumgay and Duran that are going purely to win it, there is a massive divide, and that's what the players like me when I was 5 or 6 in the juniors. I used to look at players like Garth and Tom who were 20 in seniors and wanted to strive to that. The problem is now Ethan is 20 in seniors and there's nothing to strive to, if that makes sense. It's either that or Pitchford. There's no middle ground, and it goes back to what we spoke the other week. It's that retention rate, and that's what made Grand Prix. I used to love the Grand Prix, and I used to get my granddad to drive me miles just to go and play a band full. But it's because I liked watching the last 16 of the Men's Open and it being a proper contest. Now, Duran doesn't break a sweat till he's in the semi-final, maybe even the final.
I know everyone's obviously spoke about the Grand Prix, but I'm just going to go on a personal point of view. There was a stage where, obviously I'm not going to make it professionally, and to keep me in the sport, where do I go? I don't want to play the Wembley and Harrow League, which I've won 15 times, and I'm only 19 years old at this point. Like, it's not competitive anymore. So local league is out the window. And where do you go? There's only British League, which is 4 weekends in a year. So there's no motivation to practice. So then I know my level is not going to maintain. So I just think it maybe comes back from last week's presentation with the British League structure. If there was matches of my level, or if I feel it's my level at least, that I'm competing, it's going to keep me in the sport for longer. And I think that's why I essentially stopped playing, because I got to a point where I don't want to really practice. I just want to compete because I love competing, but there was nowhere to do that. And and forget about the Grand Prix, because like Garth said, I'm not going there to win money. It's not, £400 a weekend away is not even a good financial investment for a social, because it wasn't that sociable, and it's not worth it. So that's where I'm at with it.
And that's before you buy yourself a Diet Coke, because you don't buy any beer, do you?
No. Saying that, I'm going to get a drink, but I'll leave you guys. Come on, carry on.
See, I asked this question just to get your lot's ideas, really, because I think for me it's a combination of different things. I think Jason hit on the head, like culture sort of thing. When we were going tournaments and that lot, it was more right. You play, do your hardest. All the work gets done in the bands. You play your bands, you win your bands. Go out on a Saturday night. If I could get through my first round because I was half lagging on a Sunday, then you'll be all right to then carry on for the rest of the day. But like it was that whole thing. I mean, yeah, talking to other people inside the sport, going out, making that arrangements. Who's going to the tournaments from early? I think now everyone said the same thing. Cost of them has just gone ridiculous. I don't know how the cost of entry has gone up. Like, play 2 events is like £90 now, and then the prize money's gone down since I was playing. Talking 20 years, and the prize money's actually gone down. It's gone backwards. Don't understand that. I think not having the restricted is a massive thing now as well. So for the people that are like over 21 but under 40, that extra event to be able to play is massive, And that's that whole age group.
With doubles, didn't they?
Yeah, but why play doubles? We don't play doubles in any other tournament in the whole of England. What's the point in having it in a Grand Prix? Waste of time.
I guess it's
total waste of time.
You play it,
but it's not more fun though, is it? Like, who's it more fun for? Have you seen the doubles at the last couple of Grand Prix? You're lucky if you have 10 people that want to play in it. So rather than have 50 people want to play in the restricted, that whole age group that you lot want to retrain don't have an event. So on the Sunday when you lot get to play under 21s and the vets get to play vets, what are the other people doing? They've decided to go home because I don't have an event. I'm not going to win nothing or get to play any games really in the Men's Open because I'll probably get a seed in the first round. That's true. What's the point in staying on and playing? It's a total waste of time. That, and alongside I'll probably get a lot of stick for this, but pride. I think a lot of the seniors don't like losing to juniors. It's just simple pride. You know, you don't want to go as like a 26-year-old and lose to someone that's 17. You know, I think, why am I bothering anymore? You know, I'm not going to pay my £90 and then to have some little kid say, "Oh, I beat him," and you know, and you just don't want it anymore. You know, and that's also probably why a lot of players don't play nationals. To be honest, you know, pride.
Yeah, and also the negative ranking list, the fact that you can go to a tournament, pay all that money, and come away with 3 max losses and lose 100 points, also just puts that salt in the wound. You've lost already to a junior, and now you're going to go down 50 places.
Yeah, but let's be honest. I think there's a lot of people that play tournaments. It's not about the ranking, you know. A lot of people are playing just to like be able to play tournaments. There's not that much that you can actually play as a senior. How many tournaments can you play a year? 7, 8. You know, Rory will probably argue because he probably travels most of the country.
He's on the way to a tournament right now. That's why he's
playing in 9 leagues, whatever else. But on a realistic level, what you can actually like, as a family member, how many weekends can you spend away from the table if your missus ain't involved in table tennis? You know, it's not logistically possible.
This question, I think, obviously you kept going on about the Grand Prix, but I think the British League the league structure can fix that. So, like you're saying, you don't want to give up all that time and money and but if there was a competitive league matches next to me, which you could go and play for 4 hours and go home, like, because I know a lot of guys that age when I gave up, even my age now, we go and play football every single week on a Sunday. Because you play football, it still might take 3-4 hours. It might even go 8 hours because they go to the pub after and all that. So I think giving up the time is not a problem. It's just what it's for. If it's going to be sitting in a hall, then it's not probably worth it.
That's the point. That's the point.
You go to a Grand Prix, you play your group at 8 o'clock in the morning. You don't play till 1:30 in the afternoon. Like on my weekend off work, do I want to sit in a sports hall doing absolutely nothing for 5 hours?
No, unless it's got a bar.
5 hours. Unless that's just the round one.
Oh well, yeah, but unless it's got a bar, then I probably won't make it to the first match. But it's a massive problem, and it's player retention, and someone needs to have a look into it.